All right, welcome to the Bitcoin podcast. Kale and I are joined today by Grant and Spencer Hilbert. Gentlemen, welcome to the Bitcoin podcast.
Thanks for having us on.
Appreciate it.
So you are entrepreneurs. You are first generation farmers. You're Bitcoiners. Have a lot of interesting things going on. Grant, I first met you when you were a student at Iowa State University. I still remember, and I still do to this day, one-on-one meetings with students that are in my class, and I don't remember the exact numbers that you had provided, and I certainly wasn't, and am still not a YouTube expert. But you talked about some things you had going on in YouTube at the time, 2017 or 18 perhaps. And I said, Grant, I think you're generating revenue from YouTube. And you admitted that you in fact were. Anyway, if you guys could maybe just to start us off, share a little bit of your journey, both as first generation farmers, because I think our audience will find that interesting, and as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a long story, but it goes back to I'll call it the high school days, like sophomore year of high school. Me and a buddy started a YouTube channel and we were like, okay, it was more for the business aspect. It wasn't just for fun. It was like, hey, we see these YouTubers and they make a living off YouTube. Let's try and do something like that. And so we were sophomores at the time, and we're like, let's play let's play any new video game that's coming out, because a lot of people will be searching for it on YouTube. And so that's what we did. And I always kind of had a little bit of ag background. And then I Farming Simulator just came out at the time. And so I started posting Farming Simulator videos, and a bunch of people just started watching it. And it did so much better than all the other games we were trying at the time. And so that kind of started not blowing up the channel, but took over the channel. And I started running that channel completely myself. My buddy, he wasn't interested in farming as much, took over. And then, so 2 years later, got to college, and I was like, okay, we're at like 30,000 subscribers. I was like, let's just go really hard at this, and let's post a video every single day during college. And so that's what I did. And that channel kind of blew up to over 1 million subscribers by the time I was graduating college. And so in that time, I had Kevin, you as a professor, and took entrepreneurship classes, was great taking those, learning, thinking of ideas, stuff like that. And at the time, it would have been, well, now I'm kind of backtracking, but 2017, I was on a YouTube call with one of my buddies, and then even Mr. Beast, he was in the call. He was at like 1 million subscribers at the time. Wow. And he was telling us about like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and stuff. And so he's actually the guy that got me getting into it the first time, actually. And I will say, that wasn't just Bitcoin. It was some altcoins and stuff like that. And I think everybody starts a journey where they start buying a little bit of altcoins and mess around with those. And then when the cycle happens, they come to realize, hey, maybe Bitcoin's the real thing. And so that's kind of what happened in my journey is I got started buying Bitcoin and altcoins in 2017. 2018, the bear market happens, and I just started consuming as much content as possible only on Bitcoin. I'm like, okay, this is probably the real thing here. And that's really when I started allocating a lot more capital towards Bitcoin, is through that 2018, 2019, and early 2020 timeframe. And so that's really when a lot of the learning happened and really started getting into it. And then coming out of college in 2020, started buying a little bit of farm ground and farming as a first generation farmer also. So do that, and then film that on YouTube, and then start a software company where we create a mobile game called American Farming. That company is called Squad Built. We're working on a couple more projects right now, but we started that in 2020 and released our first game in 2023. We've got about 10 people at the company right now, and just have a bunch more projects coming that we're going to announce real soon here. So kind of a little life journey over the past 10 years.
Spencer, so you joined the ride?
Yes, I actually, when Grant first it was before he went off to college, 2016, 15-ish, I lent him my laptop to start his YouTube channel, and he was playing. Usually, he went through the family computer pretty quick. You download mods. The computer was toast in 3 months. So I think we struck up a deal that summer. He was going to rent my laptop for $200 a month, and I was like, "Oh, I'll have my laptop paid." Like, I didn't have a loan on it, but I maybe paid $500 for it. Oh, he uses it for 2 months. I'll get all my money back. And after 2 months, the laptop was toast because he downloaded more mods. So I was kind of there watching Grant start a YouTube channel, and him and his buddy got a $600 check one month or something, and it was pretty nuts. They went over, celebrated, and yeah, so I was able to see that at the time. I was like 14, 15-ish, all Grant. Grant and I played sports and stuff, but we were always really interested in business. I think the first job I had was detasseling, right? So we were just kind of working, very aware of, we were just very interested in kind of making money at a young age. So that kind of, that was always kind of our interest. So when the YouTube thing took off, we're like, okay, this is huge. We can go to school during the day. We can spend 4 hours at night, make a YouTube video. And if it makes $50 a day, like that is way better than anything I could do at 15 years old. So that was, it was pretty obvious opportunity in front of us. So I started a YouTube channel too, very similar to Grant's. We worked together. We made videos together. And so, yes, very, very similar kind of journey along that. And 2016, 2017, then kind of heard about Bitcoin. And at that time, Grant and I were like, where do we invest our money? Where do we put our money? And that's kind of where we found Bitcoin, just as we're reading more books, listening to podcasts. And then Bitcoin was in the news always in like 2017, got so popular. Everybody heard about it for the first time, at least.
So why the interest in agriculture and eventually in owning farmland growing up in suburban Iowa? Where did that come from?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it came from my grandparents farmed in northern Iowa. And so like when we were 6th, 7th grade, we were kind of always around their farm a little bit. And it was always a dream to farm. So you got in your blood, but my dad never farmed. He was a child of the 80s, went to the city to get a job. And so we always loved that. And so I was like, okay, well, someday maybe by the time I'm older, I could maybe buy a little bit of ground and kind of start a little hobby farm. Luckily, I had a lot of luck, and it happened a little sooner, I should say.
Yeah. So what's your farm look like today?
So today, we farm just in central Iowa here, have about 500 acres. I call it weekend warriors still. We're farming on the weekends. We're growing. A lot of the help came from YouTube too. And so like a lot of we document the journey on YouTube. So we always have people in the comment section telling us, giving us advice, but we're truly a product of like trial and error. I didn't know how to set a planter, didn't know how to set a combine, and just called my seed dealer up, who was a neighbor who also farmed, and like, hey, it's first day of harvest. I kind of how do I set this combine? Like I didn't really think through some of those things. You think until you get out there and you're like, oh shoot, well, what do I do? So yeah, and that's kind of been the farming too. It's fun on the operation side, but owning land, cleaning up land, fixing land, investing in land has been kind of investment strategy too. It's just how do we allocate capital? How do we diversify? And so owning farmland has been kind of one of my go-to of long-term holdings and long-term wealth building.
So you talked
Awesome.
about owning Bitcoin and some altcoins. Yeah, my first purchase was in 2021. Same thing, half Bitcoin, half Ethereum.
Yeah, yeah.
Bear market, sell what's left of the Ethereum, buy all Bitcoin, and start doing some research.
And I've seen friends over time. Everybody goes through the same thing. They'll buy a little bit of altcoins, a little bit of Bitcoin, realize Bitcoin's the go-to.
So how long did it take you to come to that realization?
Let's see. I would have bought my first Bitcoin in September, October 2017, and then probably by December and January 18, there was, I'll say, the start of the crash or a big crash there in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And then probably by March, April, I was just all in on Bitcoin.
Okay. Pretty fast.
And right at that time too, 2017, we were paying a lot of attention. There was ICOs every week. If you're just watching YouTube videos, Twitter.
BitConnect. Yeah.
Connect, that was huge. You can go on
Yeah.
YouTube right now, search that. There's a guy that comes out on a stage, and it was, you give BitConnect 10 grand and you're going to get a 50% return every month. And they took your money, lent it out to others. And it was just a pyramid scheme scam in the end. But that was kind of every cycle. There's like a poster child. So this past one was FTX crash, the exchange crash. The one before that in 2013 was like Mount Gox. So it it was just, you at that time, by 2018, we got to see so many people, so many Bitcoiners, just so many examples, people saying I lost everything, had my money on exchange, I lent it out. And it's like, wait a second, Bitcoin's like the only true real thing that happened here. And everything kind of came after Bitcoin, and people are just trying to copy it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting. You know, one of the things that really popped off in 2021 that was similar to that, our friend Clayton calls that crime season, and ICOs got in trouble. And then, you know, in my first bull run, it was 2020, 2021, and it was kind of NFTs came in, and then meme coins came in. I was doing TikToks for crypto education at the time. Similar to you, Grant, I have a crazy story of who got me into meme coins. It was Sam Bankman-Fried himself DMing me about Shiba Inu.
Really?
Yes.
That
Yes.
is wild.
I know. Yeah. So yeah,
I think
it
you're
pays.
fortunate he didn't become a better DM.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like sending out DMs to crypto influencers at the time. He was like, you guys got to look at this new meme coin, because he was kind of into the Shiba Inu thing. And that's the first meme coin that started off everything since Dogecoin, which is interesting. And now meme coins are kind of the way people are getting scammed.
Another way that probably helped us stay away from altcoins and understand it pretty quick was like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the podcasts we listened to, we were trying to figure out what is Bitcoin and what is the difference in Bitcoin versus other investments. So like 2019, I remember Grant and I, like we were doing a road trip somewhere and listening to Anthony Pompliano and Peter Schiff debate gold versus Bitcoin. It's kind of things like that that really lay everything out. It's very early still in the Bitcoin kind of, it's still getting popular. It's before 2020. And we got really interested in like economics, finance. I studied econ and finance at Iowa State. Grant was ag economics, so a bunch of econ classes. And, you know, our parents always kind of taught us about the 2008 financial crisis and just understanding as we got older, like what happened there, getting off the gold standard in the 70s. We were just very much students of like, what is money for 4 or 5, probably 6 years by the time, you know, we were through college. So it was just very interesting to start to learn about Bitcoin in that lens, rather than like, hey, how can I get a 5x return versus a 3x return? It's like, no, you're missing out. Like, this is a very long game. Altcoins are kind of just, once you look at it that lens, and like Lynn Aldine, we listened to her a lot, Preston Pish, what Bitcoin did. So we stayed away from the 10-minute YouTube videos when the bull market's going on, and the guy's like, hey, here's my list of 100 coins, you know, diversify into all of them and go. And so that's kind of how we got into Bitcoin. It was really looking at it in a traditional lens, taking classes, and just as we got older, it's like, okay, this is real money. This is better than farmland. This is better than like real estate when you actually break it down. If you're trying to store wealth. Yeah.
I mean, what were some of the key characteristics as you think back to that early journey and saying, yeah, Bitcoin is the digital asset. This is what makes it attractive relative to real world assets, whether that be commercial real estate, farmland real estate, or whatever.
Probably the biggest one comparing it to real estate is it's probably really the only thing you can truly own and take with you. So like farmland, where you pay a property tax, and I understand you got to pay for roads and get your product out of your field to communities, and I get all that, but in the end, we are kind of reliant on the American government making sure that you're owning this piece of land, and that this isn't going to happen in America, but another government come in and say, no, we own it. Or
when you get your property tax statement every year and it just is what it is, more or
Yes.
less. It's like, hey, it's going up by this much this year. Because so send us your
Exactly.
money. Otherwise, we're going to take your land
Exactly.
or your house or whatever.
And I get taxes, I get all that. But in the end, on paper, when you're comparing it apples to apples, then all of a sudden Bitcoin is actually something that you can truly own. And there's different arguments back and forth with gold too. But that's one huge thing. You can actually own it, move it, take it with you, and you're the owner.
I'm reading a book called Chasing Gold about gold during the early days of World War II. And I knew some of this,
Mm-hmm.
but it is crazy some of the individual adventures that the countries of Northern Europe did to try to get their gold out of their countries, out of vaults, into either Britain, Casablanca, the United States, Canada. I mean, it just is crazy. And I was a gold bug for a long time. Yeah, and I'm your parents' generation, guys. but it's sort of like, okay, when you read those stories about these boats getting torpedoed with gold in the cargo hold, it's like, oh, okay. Self-custody
Exactly.
is a whole lot better with a digital asset than a metal.
That's a lot of those kind of theoretical things in history. Like Michael Saylor does a really good job in his podcast, like really zooming out 100 years, bringing in those examples. And like another good example is inland served pretty good in America here at doing this. But if I wanted to give my 5th grandchild 150 years from now, some sort of value that I created in the year 2025, what vehicle am I going to do that in? And not have a lot of costs associated with getting it from 2025 to 2125, right? 100 years from now. So like gold, you're going to need to have some sort of security holding it back. Good thing is it doesn't erode. Real estate, you're going to need to replace the roof every 25 years. There's some costs with that. And then land, you are banking on the government making sure that that you're still owning it and that the deed's true and another government doesn't come in and take over your land. And so answering those questions, and that's where the Bitcoin podcasts have come in. And Grant, how many hours have you listened to Bitcoin podcasts mowing the lawn since 2016?
Yeah. I've listened to it forever and stuff, but yeah, I've always kind of viewed it as just a better version of gold. I like gold and Bitcoin are trying to do the same thing, but I've always viewed it as a better version when you look at like the stock to flow or the economics around Bitcoin. Like I've always viewed it as gold added like about $20 trillion worth of market cap here in the past year or two. Bitcoin's at $1 trillion. So how much upside does Bitcoin have here when in reality it's on the economic side, it's probably a better version of gold. As gold's going up here, more miners are coming online, mining more gold's coming on the supply side. Whereas if Bitcoin goes on a huge rally, that stock to flow really just stays flat, and the Bitcoin mining difficulty adjustment kicks in, and it's just on a line that's just straight up and it's predictable. Versus gold can be anything depending on how much miners go after it. So that's kind of my bull case and upside is how I viewed it.
Well, and there's something deeply cultural at this moment still about gold and about silvers.
Yes.
And silver's deeply cultural, more in like China and India for a whole bunch of different reasons. Ornamental, historic money issues, gold everywhere, for both ornamental and monetary issues. But Spencer, to your point of your great-grandchildren 100 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
that thing that's like, what's the store of value? What's the self-sovereignty? So yeah, taking some inspiration from this book, Chasing Gold, on Saturday night, Patty and I watched the movie from almost 20 years ago, Monument Men, with Matt Damon, Murray.
Russell Crowe, I think.
No, John Goodman. Anyway, World War II setting where they get these archaeologists and art historians to try to recover at the end of the war the loot that the Nazis had stolen. And so they find it in these salt mines of Germany, a good bit of it anyway. And this was at the start of this Chasing Gold book, because there was a whole part of the mine filled with gold bars and gold jewelry. and gold fillings, the grimmest find of anything that they found. Anyway, my wife Patty's an artist, so she's into the art, and sort of the lament in the movie is all that Eisenhower and the American military seemed to care about was the gold, not the art.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Americans, whatever. But you didn't have to worry in the United States about like a government taking your gold. And I said, actually, dear, in April 1933, Roosevelt administration hung up in every post office in the United States that you had to turn your gold in. And if you had your gold in a safety deposit box, as many Americans did, your bank was obligated to inform the federal government that they believed that you had gold in a safety deposit box. So, yeah, self-custody, good luck.
Mm.
Yeah, good reason for anyone that's getting started with their Bitcoin journey. Get it off the exchanges, right? What do you guys use? Do you use a cold storage wallet?
Yeah, hardware wallets. Yep, that's the goal. And if you're gonna have it on exchange, have it on a trusted one, or a bigger one. Kind of the idea is to have your money with a bigger bank, less likely to collapse. And if it does, then the government will come in and save it. So, that's
What's your
kind of the idea.
What's your
there.
backup?
If you're
Another
gonna
reason
use
to
an
have
exchange.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. So things like that too. And honestly, we're sitting here 6 years since COVID. And if I kind of thought if Americans felt inflation, because we haven't really felt it since the 70s. I thought over these past 5 years, a lot more people would come to Bitcoin as a store of value and start to understand it, because everybody now has lived it firsthand experience of what inflation is and not just really reading about it. So that's been kind of interesting. And then, yeah, just the UK use case for Bitcoin is getting even stronger as everybody has seen what happened in 2020, PPP money, stimulus checks. It's like if you took your $1,200 stimulus check from Trump 6 years ago in Bitcoin, I think it's 12 or 15,000. I could be off right now. It's just examples like that. People, I feel like a lot of people just need to live through it to understand it. I feel like everybody's lived through it the past 6 years.
What's your guys' perspective as the next generation, and me being part of the older generation? Anyway, speaking for my generation, I think it's sort of like, all right, the dollar is a terrible currency, but is better than all the other fiat ones. And potentially at the end of a gun, we're going to make sure the dollar is the thing. For your generation, do you think there is some dawning, or perhaps beyond dawning, realization that, there's a monetary change that is beginning to be felt?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing is the Ray Dalio changing world order in terms of, is the public starting to wake up to this? Probably that, and how many views his tweets and videos get and his books is probably the biggest gauge of how minds are changing.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I would say just watching friends and family too. Kevin, when we look at your generation, if a financial advisor tells your friends to say, hey, maybe allocate a little portion towards Bitcoin or some other asset class, they're looking at the guy like, you're crazy. But my friends and people around our age kind of have been used to it, have heard the talk, and are like, yeah, I know Jimmy and Dave who own some Bitcoin stuff. He's like, that makes sense. I grew up around this stuff. And so as the wealth transfer happens, as more wealth gets passed down, we may see people our age just being open to it and be like, yes, maybe the dollar isn't always the thing we're going to be using. So.
Yeah, you give me a flashback to an MBA class that I was teaching late last summer, and a lady who, let's just say probably closer to my age than yours. And we're talking about trends generally that are going to impact agriculture, and shock of all shocks, we got to money, and at least a few of my hypotheses around money changing. And so the lady the next day is like, yeah, I spoke to my financial advisor and we bought some IBIT, some of the BlackRock ETF Bitcoin shares. And I came within probably too close of a whisker of being like, that's not the way to do it. But then it's like, she's starting her journey. Don't be like that guy. I had my own journey. buying IBIT is as good of a start as, especially for somebody from my generation or close to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And even people our age are seeing it. They're like, okay, well, I'm coming out of college. I'm starting to make some money. Okay, where do I allocate that? Right? You can't save in truly US dollars. You have to find some type of financial advisor to help allocate your money. And so people our age are already seeing it. Like, US dollar isn't a savings technology. We need something else. And so even Bitcoin is looked upon. A lot of people, I get a lot of texts from a lot of friends starting to make full-time income. They're like, hey, where should I allocate this capital?
I was going to ask, you guys have touched on it a little bit, but how do you think of this from like a portfolio perspective? Again, if you have a financial advisor, they're talking to you about portfolio and percentage applications and concepts like that. So you've got farmland as part of your portfolio, Bitcoin zooming back when you started to make some money. Was some in a Robinhood account and you were thinking about equities? Anyway, how do you guys think about kind of your portfolio approach, if in fact you have one?
Yeah, starting out, Bitcoin was for sure just kind of a hype thing, and we were just trying to figure out where to put our money. But now, today, probably the best way I would phrase it is if you bought Bitcoin and you held it for 4 years at any time. Maybe it's changed just in the past couple of months with this bear market, but you usually made out. If you held it for 4 years, you didn't lose any money. You made out, and because everybody knows Bitcoin's really volatile, you got to be a little respectful with the volatility. And so I wouldn't treat it fully as a savings account in that sense. But and any money that you're willing to hold for 4 years, that's what I tell family and friends. Then it's safe going in Bitcoin. Anything that you're going to need tomorrow, just with the volatility. So that's how I treat it. Right, a portion's going to go to hopefully to my grandkids. A portion's going to go here, and super long-term holding. But yeah, and no leverage. Do not take leverage out and buy Bitcoin. Don't mortgage your house. Some people say that kind of stuff to do it, even though it's looked good at certain times. That's kind of a 4-year hold is the best way to put it. In whatever amount of money or percentage of your portfolio you're comfortable putting in, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I agree with Spencer. My view has always been, over the next 3 to 4 decades, the United States is always going to be debasing or easing the currency, which is going to maybe not show up in a real inflation environment, but you can see it and you can feel it. And so I've always been, okay, own a good amount of Bitcoin and own farmland, own hard assets. And so own farmland and denominate that farmland in fixed currency debt, hopefully low interest rate debt. Obviously right now is not a great time to take out fixed debt, but in 2020, 2021 was a great time to have that 30-year fixed debt. And so that's kind of always been my game plan, along with having equities, starting your own business. So like software company, it's its own thing. And it's, there's a lot of growth potential there into the future. So you got your safe assets, and then you got your call option assets also.
Yeah, the best asset when in like 2021 wasn't buying the house that already inflated 20% in 6 months. It was actually locking in your 2.5-3% mortgage. And so that is where real estate, there's value there because you can leverage it so much, and the volatility isn't crazy like Bitcoin. Maybe at one point I would say, okay, it's okay to leverage against Bitcoin, but right now it's too the market's not mature enough to do that. But yeah, that's where we're talking about real estate is a play when you can use that smartly and safely.
Speaking of portfolios, Spencer, you have a great story your wife was telling me at that dinner. Do you want to talk about that story for anyone who's thinking about getting started? How did you guys get started together?
Yes, good questions. Yeah, when somebody listening to this podcast right now is like, I have zero exposure to Bitcoin. I'm listening to this right now. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos. Seems kind of sketchy. Probably the best way to get into Bitcoin is just buying some. The first thing you need to do is watch a YouTube video how to buy Bitcoin, buy it on an exchange, put it into a hardware wallet, and then start doing some research. Get some skin in the game. That's the best way to learn. Because when you see it drop 20% and you have a somewhat meaningful amount in, then you're like, oh, I should probably get my conviction up or sell out. That's where I would get started. And yeah, the story how my wife kind of got into it. she was a server, a waitress, and so she would just kind of take every month $200, $300 and put it in. And it's like, okay, let's set this aside. And then it grows to a decent amount at this point. Yeah, very small amounts, 10, 20 years from now can mean a lot. And I just bought the book, The Way of Bitcoin. I haven't read it yet. It should be here tomorrow. And it's kind of the idea of how Bitcoin can kind of make you self-sovereign. Again, I haven't read it yet, but Bitcoin's like the ultimate savings tool. I don't treat it as a savings account, but it is like, we were talking like 100 years ago, 80 years ago, the dollar held value, was backed by gold. We were on the gold standard. And it's like, hey, people just saved and saved. And I always kind of hated, as I learned about personal finance, I was like, gosh, I wish, I'm running the math here, I wish I could save my cash. It would be really easy, put it in a bank account. I work, I don't have to worry about it. But as we talk, obviously the money's kind of broken. So you need to hire a financial advisor if you aren't doing your own research and figuring out your own thing. And so Bitcoin is kind of the one option now. You just buy it, you hold it, you save it. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to know about all these special accounts and tax saving. And gosh, yeah, I just view it as the perfect opportunity for our generation to actually go back to the old way of, work your job. Your money is going to hold its value and hopefully gain some value too. Yeah.
And coming from a saving side, when you look at Bitcoin on the saving side, like I'm coming from the ag perspective, since I've graduated college, land, as a farmer looking to buy land has only gotten every old farmer you talk to says land only goes up. It only goes up and it'll go up forever. But since I've started farming, land has only gotten cheaper every year on a 4-year cycle. It's gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper when denominated in the currency of Bitcoin. So when we look at that too, and maybe I'm wrong way in the future, I could be wrong way in the future, but land has only gotten cheaper. So as a savings technology of even a farmer getting started up, maybe it's allocating some towards Bitcoin, right? It's outperforming land on a 4-year basis or 4-year cycle.
Grant, I want to get in on you talking about maybe a cushion that you got started there. You started out, trying to be as lean as possible while starting out your business, while starting out buying some ground, and you were investing in Bitcoin, in the years prior to that. Did that Bitcoin give you a cushion? Was it worth, the sacrifice of going a little bit lean to now down the line?
Yeah. Bitcoin kind of gives a cushion in the stance that, like, okay, so if I'm going to buy farmland, a banker looks at my balance sheet as like, okay, you got, this much capital or something like that. But that's really the only kind of cushion it gave it, kind of. So it's only
Gotcha.
from a balance sheet perspective, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, from like farmland, yeah, Grant, your point on denominated in Bitcoin, it's interesting to start looking at the world denominated in Bitcoin. So at Bitcoin, we're tracking in corn Bitcoin price, sort of the same thing. We'll get to the point soon enabling sales of corn and stable coins or Bitcoin, more or less. So it's like there will be better times to choose to sell corn or soybeans or whatever in Bitcoin, and sort of same thing. There'll be better and worse times maybe to buy land with some Bitcoin or leveraging Bitcoin or whatever the case may be. But even in dollars, yeah, land prices went up for a long time, and I've been around for a very long time, but I had 2 cousins that graduated 1 year apart from high school, and they're 5 and 6 years older than me. So they graduate, I think, in 1979 and 80, so a long time ago, but they want to farm. So first thing they do is buy some farmland. Things are looking great at that stage. They buy farmland. I'm not going to remember exactly, but it's like $1,200 to $1,500 per acre, which you're going to look at that now like nothing. Anyway, what happened in the 80s is that farmland fell in value to like $300 to $500 an acre, which again, today I realize, but still, now they made it through and they're in a good place today. But can farmland prices, even in dollars, change? Yeah, they can.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Bitcoin cycles, Spencer, I know that you are different than me. You still believe in the 4-year cycle. Is
Yep.
that correct?
Yep, for
So
sure. Yeah. So yeah, there's the power law kind of theory and cycle. Plan B's. Plan B on Twitter, if you've seen him, he was on everywhere. And his kind of cycle theory broke. But the idea is in one good, if again, somebody's getting into Bitcoin, some good resources, and probably number one for me, there's a YouTube channel. Just search Bob Lucas, follow him on Twitter, and you can go back and watch 20 to 45-minute long videos. It's one of his first ones, 2018. And I remember Grant's the one who found that guy in 2018, bear market, Bitcoin's dead. It fell 80%, 20,000 down to 3,000, and it sat there for 8 months. And I wrote off Bitcoin at that time, but Grant listened to Bob Lucas, and there's a video that Grant watched, and he's like, wow, this all makes sense. Really, when you're buying and trading or doing anything, you want to buy when everybody's bearish. So if you want to, essentially what those videos are is you can get the feel of what it was like in the bear markets, and essentially something super volatile like Bitcoin, you need conviction to hold through those, and that's where the money's made, is buying the bottom. So that's a super good resource. And the 4-year cycle, just to bring it together, it kind of predicted, and you can watch Bob Lucas's videos. At the top was October 6th of this past year. And then the bottom should be roughly 350 days later. So looking at a bottom October of this year, roughly late September. And so that's all the theory is. Kind of subscribe to that. And yeah, you can play around with that if you want to trade it and try and get a little more return there. But in the end, just holding Bitcoin over 4 years has always kind of made sense.
And at the end of the day, really, it's more based on the fundamental economics of the halving cycle, the fact that less Bitcoin's coming out, and that just happens to be around 4 years.
Yep, that's why the cycle is 4-year cycle. You'll hear that a lot. So Grant was talking about the stock to flow of Bitcoin and comparing that to gold. And just this past halving, Bitcoin is technically a harder asset, meaning new supply coming on the market to what is already out there gets cut in half every 4 years, and now we're lower than gold. And so, like, right, gold's went up a bunch. Every gold miner in the world right now is loaning money, getting another excavator, another dredge to bring on more supply of gold into the market. And so Bitcoin, let's say Bitcoin went to $1 million tomorrow, there was a 2-week difficulty adjustment, but just forget about that for now. But everybody will go out and buy Bitcoin miners because they're really profitable. Just like the gold miners right now are opening up new dredge sites, buying big excavators. What happens with Bitcoin is no matter how many people are out mining Bitcoin, no more Bitcoin is getting brought onto the market than what we already know. And so gold's a little different in that sense. Let's say gold went to $10 million tomorrow. We would all go in our backyards with a shovel and a pick and start on Amazon. There would be $100 kits of shaking gold and trying to find gold in your backyard. And then somebody really lucky in Wyoming finds, let's say they find a huge deposit of gold, the supply doubles, and the price would fall, supply and demand there. So Bitcoin's unique in that we don't have these supply shocks, and these 4-year halvings have really, everybody believes in the 4-year cycle. There's an idea that because the halvings are less and less in terms of Bitcoin, new supply coming off the market, that they're going to mean less, and the 4-year cycle will go away. So far, this 4-year cycle is right on script with everything.
Yeah.
So.
Kale, I will say, so go ahead, Kevin.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I will say, like, it's almost crazy how accurate, like, even when you pull up like a Bob Lucas video, how it is like on the 4-year cycle. And this is why I still believe in it. For the past 3 cycles, we've peaked around week 35 of the cycle. So from the previous bottom, the last bottom, it took about 35 weeks to peak out at the top of the cycle. And then about week 47 was where we then bottomed to finish off the cycle and start the new cycle. So, coming into this previous cycle, Bob was like, okay, here's what I think will happen if we peak around week 35 and end around week 48. And that's exactly what happened this cycle. We peaked right around week 35. And then here we're coming into a bear market right now at 70K. And at week 48 is when he predicts around the bottom will be. And it's happened the past 3 cycles. And it's crazy how accurate it is. Like, I almost don't believe it when I look at it.
It's just time. It's not price too on these cycles.
Yeah, just time in the cycle.
Just time. Yep. He doesn't. Yeah. There's no price predictions.
I wonder how long that will last. but
It probably won't last it won't last forever.
I did take some of those charts, like the stock to flow, and I've aggregated a bunch of those on-chain valuation models. And so a cool thing that we're going to have on our nodes and on our software is kind of this weighted dollar cost averaging strategy. I'm going to show you that real quick. It's really cool, and I think it's a good way of people being able to look at something and invest in a more systemized way to kind of take the emotion out of that. Like you talk about feeling what a bear market really feels like. And it's rough. This would be a good way to make sure people are dollar cost averaging and maybe getting more of a bang for their buck as well based on where we're at in the cycle. So this is kind of the chart. And you can see when we had different areas, aggregate a bunch of valuation charts, and then you just have different Z-scores. So you have areas that are extreme buy areas and extreme sell areas where you definitely would, prefer to stop the dollar cost averaging. And a lot of people come out from this fairly well.
So you're putting us at a 1.44 on your scale.
Yeah, right now is it?
What's the top end of the scale?
That's the top end is plus 2.5. So if you get to over a 2.5 Z-score, you probably don't want to be buying. And right now we're in an area where I would have anyone that comes on and does this strategy on our software would be buying 2 times the normal unit amount of a dollar cost averaging strategy.
Yeah, now's a great time to buy whenever there's fear, and there's more fear than optimism. And so
I'm not seeing enough news articles of Bitcoin is dead yet, though. That's
Right.
that's the best time to buy is when there's all the news articles Bitcoin's dead.
Need a few more, huh?
Yeah.
I saw some when we hit 60K.
There we go.
Yeah.
But the top on this wasn't too crazy too, right? You didn't have your distant family members calling, asking whether, because you talked about it at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, to how do I buy Bitcoin? Those are always the signs when every mainstream media outlet's talking about it. And we didn't have that on this cycle top back
And
in
we
October.
didn't really have an alt season or anything either. It was really just a Bitcoin run.
Yep.
Which is wild.
And every cycle is different. And last one was NFTs. The one before that was ICOs. The one before that was, I don't know exactly, but yeah, they all different, but it all rhymes. And the best resources, watch some old Bob Lucas YouTube videos to build conviction. And it's like, oh my, it's so good if you're into that stuff. And Grant and I have always been into economics. So it's like, Grant, you probably watched like 2,000 hours of Bitcoin podcasts just for fun. So, yeah, that's how you build conviction.
So I got asked a question last week by a farmer, and I'll report my answer. But you guys can critique it, disagree with it, add to it, whatever, or provide your own angle. His basic question was, well, on the sort of discussion that we've been having, okay, Kevin, you arrived at this idea that Bitcoin is the one, but there's all these alt currencies, and how do you know that it's the one? And I said, well, without going into it, part of it is just the technology design. Proof of work, CAP, halving cycle is a distributed open source. We've got 25,000 nodes globally running this. But then I said, for the same reason, the dollar now, the British pound before that, gold, denarius in ancient times, the florin in the Middle Ages. Anyway, it's easier to trade with other people, which is what we want to do as human beings, if we do it in a common currency. And so we tend to float toward a small number of currencies. And with the digital world making us one world, we're going to float towards one currency, and it's going to be digital. And yeah, could have it been something else? Could there be other alternatives? Yeah, but we're going to want to float towards one. Bitcoin was first and the best design, and slowly we're coming towards that. Anyway, that was my explanation. It seemed okay. What do you guys think of that as part of an explanation to somebody coming in from the outside, or what would you add to it?
Yeah, usually the currency with the biggest network effect, gravity pulled, stores that one. So that's there's a million different arguments on why Bitcoin would or wouldn't win. And another thing too is the longer people think there's another Bitcoin or a Bitcoin 2.0 is going to beat it out, then the more upside there is. So those are always good things to hear, especially now. But go ahead, Grant, if you were.
Oh, no. Yeah, I agree. And on the dominance side, Bitcoin's had like 98, 99% dominance on the proof of work stake side. Or people don't realize that a lot of these other coins are proof of stake. Not many other coins are proof of work like Bitcoin has. And how it organically formed. Like, you couldn't launch another Bitcoin and have it organically perform. The reason it is the way it is today is because a lot of people doubted it at the start, and it was able to just slowly keep continuing on. Nobody really truly tried to attack the network early on. And so it's not repeatable the way it first started. And we've had a lot of tests with it. We've had Bitcoin Cash. Like, even when I was getting started in 2017, 2018, I remember Bitcoin Cash came out and I was just confused. What one do I buy? And now we look at Bitcoin Cash today. Bitcoin Cash is, I don't know what the market cap is, but it's extremely, extremely low. But at the
Not
time,
much.
I remember being like, whoa, what one do I buy? What one's the real one? And it was that close back then. So we've had a lot of tests throughout the past decade with Bitcoin too.
Do have another technical answer to why I think Bitcoin wins, and it's very recent. It's because of AI agents coming out. And Bitcoin is really the only thing that should be used by AI agents. I know Ethereum has vied for their answer, but we need a proof of work over proof of stake digital currency for AI agents. Otherwise, humans lose all control because proof of stake agents can all accumulate a vast amount of Ethereum, become a staking operator, and now they have just as much and probably more say than most humans in the world. But if we have a real world physical constraint of putting energy into mining, well, now Bitcoin is really in the hands of humans, and AI agents can use it to, get involved in the economy, and that's great. But humans will retain the actual control since we're the only ones in the physical.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in recent Elon Musk interviews, where energy is going to be the sole commodity, the most valuable commodity, and yeah, proof. Once you study a proof of work versus proof of stake system, what that means. Totally agree with you. The AI systems, how do we validate things? Yeah, I don't fully understand the AI everything, but everything leans to point towards Bitcoin is going to be what they'll use.
Well, maybe in agriculture, we have a little bit of an advantage over understanding proof of work as well, because essentially what we do is turn the sun into proof of work. Like you grow corn, it's stored energy. You feed the corn to livestock, that livestock while standing, that livestock while we harvest it into a meat product sitting in the grocery store. That is stored energy that we consume. Same idea, I think. Well, Spencer, Grant, thank you for taking the time to be a part of the Bitcoin podcast. Thanks for all that you guys do. Any last parting thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I just had a list of here's some resources if
Please.
somebody's listening and trying to figure out what to do. Lynn Aldine is a super good listen. She does a bunch of interviews, like I feel like once a month. She has a book called Broken Money. That's a solid top 3 Bitcoin book you should read if you're getting into it. Preston Pish has a really good podcast. What Bitcoin Did is a really solid podcast as well. The Michael Saylor interviews are pretty interesting. They are a little crazy, but some of these far off perspectives, it gets your brain to think in a whole different way. And then, the Bob Lucas YouTube videos are solid. So those are just some, if you're looking for more stuff, more resources, that's huge, and hopefully cut through some of the noise. There's a lot of noise, especially 2 years from now, we'll be in a crazy bull market. Bitcoin's at 200K, and it's like, gosh, there's all this just fluff and noise and scams and people making 10-minute YouTube videos on the next coin. So try and get rid of all that. This is the perfect time to sit down and listen to these podcasts when you're driving, mowing the lawn this summer, and just building conviction and trying to understand what Bitcoin is. This is the best time to do it.
Nice.
Yeah. My only advice, and it's not investment advice, but from my past history, just looking at the best buys have always been when it feels terrible to buy it. Your gut's like, oh, I don't want to do this. And those are the best buys by far in Bitcoin. And the worst buys are when everybody is piling in and it feels so great to just go buy a little Bitcoin because everybody else is doing it. So that's my only little piece of advice I'll leave you with. So
You guys
thanks
want to
for
plug
having
your
us on.
socials too?
Just Grant and Spencer Hilbert YouTube channels, and then Yeah,
on
that's very good.
Instagram, and
Yep.
that's YouTube and Instagram, really.
Pull it up.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us on, guys.
All right.